Bonjour French 2 students. Here is your teaching video for lesson 22, parts B and C. We'll be looking at pages 321 to 325 in your textbook. S'il vous plaît, ouvrez vos livres à la page 321. So remember when we looked at the introduction to this lesson, they had the past tense, okay? And you'll remember that past tense required two words. To form the past tense. So that's what we're going to be looking at today is those two words. And remember, one of those words is avoir, which is why we reviewed our present tense conjugations of avoir and some avoir expressions previously. So, le passé composé des verbes en ER. The sentences below describe past events. In the French sentences, the verbs are in the passé composé. Note the forms of the passé composé and its English equivalents. Hier, j'ai réparé mon vélo. Yesterday, I fixed my bike. Le week-end dernier, Marc a organisé un boom. Last weekend, Marc organized a party. Pendant les vacances, nous avons visité Paris. During vacation, we visited Paris. So again, kind of notice here, right, what these all have in common. We have a conjugated form of avoir. Okay, so again, that's this present tense of avoir that we're going to talk about in just a minute. And then we have, okay, a second word, which is called the past participle. So again, we see here the forms. The passé composé is composed of two words. For most verbs, it is formed as follows: the present of avoir plus the past participle. So again, what we're talking about with the present of avoir is we're talking about our forms of avoir. So that's j'ai, tu as, il, elle, on, a, nous avons, vous avez, and il and elle pluriel, ont. Okay, so again, in red here, right, are the present tense forms of avoir for these sentences. And in blue, underlined in blue, are those past participles. Note the forms of the passé composé for visiter. Passé composé. J'ai visité Québec. Tu as visité Paris. Il, elle, on a visité Montréal. Nous avons visité Genève. Vous avez visité Strasbourg. Ils, elles ont visité Fort-de-France. Okay, so again, in all of these, we have the past participle, which is the visiter, and notice that our visiter stays the same in all six forms of our verb. And then we have our form of avoir, which are our regular present tense conjugations of avoir, right? So here's our present of avoir. Again, okay, and then here's our past participle, which stays the same every time. So our sentences here would say, I visited Quebec, you visited Paris, one visited Montreal, we visited Geneva, you visited Strasbourg, they visited Fort-de-France. For all ER verbs, the past participle is formed by replacing the ER of the infinitive by this accented E. Now, one of the things that's nice about this is that these two both sound the same. So there's no change to how you actually pronounce this, but there is a change with the spelling. So again, we have jouer, jouer. Nous avons joué au tennis. Parler, parler. Eric a parlé à Nathalie. Téléphoner, téléphoner. Vous avez téléphoné à Cécile. So we played tennis. Eric talked to Natalie. You called Cecile. Okay, so they're spelled differently, but they sound the same. So again, I would really encourage you to have some notes. So we'll kind of do some notes here, right? So this is our past tense. Up until this point, you've only been able to talk about things that were in the present tense, so things that you were currently doing. So this is our first time where we're going to be able to talk about things that have taken place in the past, okay? It is a composed, if you will, tense. Okay, so that means that it's going to requires two words. Okay, and those two words are our present of avoir and a past participle. Okay, what this looks like in terms of our format is we're going to have subject, our conjugated form of avoir, then our past participle, and then kind of our ... for whatever else is in that sentence. And I'm really going to kind of put a ... in front of this because you also could have questions that are asked in the past tense, and you would just put your standard question type stuff in front of it, the esca or quand esca, okay, or your question words. So it's really just this portion right here that's changing. Now, if these are negative, right, we can still have negative sentences and such. So if these are negative, our ne and our pas go around our conjugated form of avoir. Okay, so if we want our sentence to say that we didn't do something in the past, we still use our ne and our pas, but our ne and our pas go around our conjugated form of avoir. So again, we want to kind of review our forms of avoir, right? So we have j'ai, tu as, il, elle, or on a, nous avons, vous avez, and il and elle pluriel, ont. Okay, those are the forms of avoir you learned long ago in French 1. So what about this past participle? To form the past participle of any regular ER verb, we're going to take our infinitive, remove our ER, and then add the accented E. Again, what's nice about this, okay, is that the infinitive, the infinitive and the past participle sound the same. They're not spelled the same. Okay, because again, to form our past participle, we've taken the ER off of our infinitive and we've added the accented E. But in terms of saying them, they sound the same. So, for example, if we want to use habiter, okay, we could say j'ai habité à Wademan. I used to live in Wademan. Okay, so I lived in Wademan. Again, my verb is all of this. Again, I have my present tense form of avoir, okay, and then I have my past participle here. If I wanted to make this negative, okay, it would become je n'ai pas habité à Wademan. Okay, so I just put my ne and my pas around my conjugated form of avoir. Okay, so I really would encourage you to have some notes on this, and that you might write some notes like what I have written here. If you need more time to write, remember you can always pause the video. But having notes in one spot definitely makes taking your tests and quizzes, even though they're open notes and open book, a lot easier. So, now that we have kind of some notes and we've looked at this, we see the little learning about language box. The passé composé, as its name indicates, is a past tense composed of two parts. It is formed like the present perfect tense in English. There's an auxiliary verb and then the past participle of the main verb. Nous avons travaillé, we have worked. Uses. The passé composé is used to describe past actions and events. It has several English equivalents. So these really can be translated quite a few different ways. So j'ai visité Montréal can mean I visited Montreal, I have visited Montreal, I did visit Montreal. So the passé composé is quite useful in that it has quite a few different things that it can be translated as. So let's take a look at exercice 3, achat. Parler, écrire. Samedi dernier, les personnes suivantes ont fait des achats. Dis ce que chaque personne a acheté. So you'll notice that the directions in your textbook have switched over to being entirely in French. So achat is purchases or buying. Okay. So last Saturday, the following people went or did some shopping. Say what each person bought. So this is going to be the past tense. So look at our example. We have Philippe and décédé, right? So we see Philippe and pictures of CDs. So we have Philippe a acheté des CDs. Okay? So again, if we kind of notice the things that are kind of staying the same, right? Philippe and Philippe, right? That didn't change. Next we have our form of avoir. So remember our forms of avoir are j'ai, tu as, il, elle, or on a, nous avons, vous avez, and il or elle pluriel ont. Okay? Then, right, we have our acheté. Now this is going to stay the same every time because we're talking about what we bought. Okay, so our acheter will stay the same. And then lastly, right, we have this décédé, which came from our prompt, right, from our picture, right? Here's our décédé, and here's our Philippe, okay? So, again, we're going to do this as a speaking one, so I will give you a moment to kind of come up with what you think you should say, and then I'm going to say it so you can confirm whether you've done it correctly. So, number one, we have Pauline and some jeans. Pauline a acheté un jean. De, moi, and we have a watch. J'ai acheté une montre. Toi, numéro trois, toi, and then a guitar. Tu as acheté une guitare. Cat, vous, and some shirts. Vous avez acheté des chemises. 5, nous, and a stereo. Nous avons acheté une chaîne stéréo. 6, Stephanie et Isabelle, and some shoes. Stephanie et Isabelle ont acheté des chaussures. 7, Patrick et Jean-Paul, and some books. Patrick et Jean-Paul ont acheté des livres. Et numéro 8, Monsieur et Madame Dupont, and a car. Monsieur et Madame Dupont ont acheté une voiture. So we have a vocabulary box on page 323, expression pour la conversation, how to indicate the order in which actions take place. So because now that you're talking about the past tense, you may have to put things that have happened in the past in order. And so these are vocabulary words which should look familiar because they're on your vocabulary list, okay, that help you put those words in order. So I'm going to ask you to repeat after me. I'm going to do the word first, and then we'll do the sentence, and then we'll go on to the next word. S'il vous plaît, répétez d'abord, 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 nous avons invité nos copains à la boum. Après, 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 tu as préparé des sandwichs. Ensuite, Jacques a acheté des jus de fruits. Enfin, vous avez décoré le salon. Finalement, j'ai apporté ma radio cassette. Working through the translation of these. So the top one is saying, first, we invited some friends to the party. Afterwards, you prepared some sandwiches. Then, Jack bought fruit juice. At last, you decorated the living room. Finally, I brought my boombox. So it's kind of the preparations for a party. Exercice 7. Dans quel ordre? Décrivez ce que les personnes suivantes ont fait dans l'ordre logique. Describe what the following people did in logical order. So we have nous, manger, préparer la salade, and acheter des pizzas. Right? So we want to put those things in order, right? We have eat, make the salad, buy pizzas. Okay? So we see the order is d'abord, nous avons acheté des pizzas. Après, nous avons préparé la salade. Ensuite, nous avons mangé. So, the first sentence that you say is always going to start with d'abord. The second sentence you say is always going to start with après. And the third sentence you say is always going to start with, okay, ensuite. Then, notice, okay, again, we're using our new subject every time. Okay, so our subject's going to be whatever they've given us as the prompt. And then again, we're using our forms of avoir. So again, I'll kind of put those around the edge here, right? So we have j'ai, tu as, il, elle, on, a, nous avons, vous avez, il, elle, ont. Okay, so that's kind of what we see next, right? And then notice we have that past participle every time. Okay, so next we have, right, that past participle. And what's nice about saying these is they're just going to sound like the infinitive forms of the verb. Okay, so again, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to kind of put them in order and say them. And then I will give you the order that the textbook had. So numéro 1, we have Alice, travailler, trouver un job, acheter une moto. D'abord, Alice a trouvé un job. Après, elle a travaillé. Ensuite, elle a acheté une moto. 2. Les touristes canadiens voyagent en avion, visiter Paris, réserver les billets. D'abord, les touristes canadiens ont réservé les billets. Après, ils ont voyagé en avion. Ensuite, ils ont visité Paris. 3. Tu assisté au concert, acheté un billet, acheté le programme. D'abord, tu as acheté un billet. Après, tu as acheté le programme. Ensuite, tu as assisté au concert. 4. Vous dansez, apportez des CD, invitez des copains. D'abord, vous avez invité des copains. Après, vous avez apporté des CD. Ensuite, vous avez dansé. 5. Nous payez l'addition, dîner, trouver un restaurant. D'abord, nous avons trouvé un restaurant. Après, nous avons dîné. Ensuite, nous avons payé l'addition. All right, we already kind of touched on this when we did our notes. So, le passé composé, form négative. Compare the affirmative and negative forms of the passé composé in the sentences below. Affirmative, Alice a travaillé, nous avons visité Paris. Negative, Eric n'a pas travaillé, Nous n'avons pas visité Lyon. In the negative, the passé composé forms the pattern, the negative form of avoir, and the past participle, right? And the negative form of avoir means we have our subject, hi princess, ne, our present tense form of avoir, pas, and then our past participle. Okay, so the negative forms of the passé composé are right here. So, s'il vous plaît, répétez, je n'ai pas travaillé. Tu n'as pas travaillé. On n'a pas travaillé. Nous n'avons pas travaillé. Vous n'avez pas travaillé. Ils n'ont pas travaillé. Okay, and again, notice that our past participle here isn't changing. It stays the same. Again, we already put this kind of in our notes when we did notes a couple minutes ago. So we'll take a look at exercice 9, quel mauvais temps. Ce week-end, il a fait mauvais et les personnes suivantes sont restées chez elles. Dis qu'elles n'ont pas fait les choses suivantes. What terrible weather. This weekend, it was terrible outside, and the following people stayed at their houses. Say that they didn't do the following things. So again, look at our example prompt here. We have nous and nage. So again, notice our nous becomes the subject of our sentence. Then we're going to have to add, right, our form of avoir, our negative form of avoir. And then we have our past participle, okay, which remember for ER verbs, we're going to lose the ER and add that accented E. What's nice about this, remember, is these sound the same. So again, kind of going over our negative forms of avoir, right? So it's je n'ai pas, tu n'as pas, il, elle, or on n'a pas, nous n'avons pas, vous n'avez pas, and il or elle pluriel n'ont pas. Okay, so that's kind of again what goes in our squiggly line there. So our example becomes nous n'avons pas nagé. So again with these, I'm going to give you a moment to say them and then you will hear me confirm them for you. So numéro 1. Vous n'avez pas joué au tennis. 2. Philippe n'a pas rencontré ses copains à la plage. 3. Nathalie n'a pas dîné en ville. 4. Les voisins n'ont pas travaillé dans le jardin. 5. Mademoiselle Lacaze n'a pas lavé sa voiture. 6. Mes copains n'ont pas organisé de pique-nique. 7. Nous n'avons pas assisté au match de foot. 8. Tu n'as pas visité le musée. So remember, in negative sentences, okay, un, right, and these are all negative sentences, on has to become de. So that brings us to your homework, which is on page 322, exercise 3, and page 325, exercise 9. So for exercise 3, we did this one out loud. So remember, you're going to write out these answers. And again, remember what was staying the same here was the ashte. So for example, number 1 would be Pauline, or you could just use L. Okay, ashte. On Jean. Number 2, remember we're not going to use moi for our sentence, right? That means a je. So it's j'ai acheté une montre. And so you're writing out sentences like that for the 8 of them. Exercise 9, we just did this one out loud, right? And these are all going to be negative. So again, for number 1, it'd be vous n'avez pas. And then our past participle for jouer, which sounds the same but is spelled differently, au tennis. For number 2, il n'a pas. Again, rencontre, which sounds the same but is spelled differently, ses copains à la plage. So you're going to write out the sentences for the 8 of these. Au revoir, à demain.